Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of our online interview presentation series. And we want to talk today with Ion Energy. And Ali Haji, the CEO, is with us. Hey, good morning to Canada. How are you doing?
Hey, Jochen, doing very well. Happy to be here as always.
Yeah, thanks, and great for taking the time. You have brought us today with you a presentation about your fantastic company. It's lithium exploration in Mongolia. That is a really outstanding thing and not really common sense, I would say. And so let's go directly into it, and I would say the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jochen. For our listeners, some of you may have heard our story before, but count this as sort of an update. I will go through the whole story for our new listeners, given lithium's sort of prominence in the last couple of quarters of this year in 2021. So Ion Energy is a company that I co-founded in August of 2017. I was visiting Mongolia, advising in another company, Step Gold, through their acquisition process and their go public process, when my chairman and I looked at each other and said, why not look for lithium in Mongolia? And that's where Ion Energy was born. These are your typical disclaimers. I'd urge you to take a look at them in your free time. Let's talk about the team a little bit. I've had 13 years of international asset management experience. I worked at Invesco as an IT asset management analyst, having worked multiple different roles over 13 years around the world for that organization. I joined Atma Corp around 4 years ago as an advisor to the acquisition of Step Gold. I also sit on the board of 2 mining companies. And my father has been in mining since 1998, hence the mining heritage. Matthew Wood is my chairman, a serial mining entrepreneur, a Rio Tinto gold scholar, an individual that's had multiple exits around the world. His most recent exit was the sale of Avanco Resources to Oz Minerals in Brazil for 440 million Aussie in March 2018. So he's one of those rare breeds that marries the geological side of the house along with the banking side of the house as well. Half my board is Mongolian. My first board member that is Mongolian is Batatu Marochir. He's also the chief executive of Step Gold. He is a special advisor to the Ministry of Mines. He was with the previous government, reappointed with the new government, so we are politically agnostic in country. Anil Varach is my investment banking director, ex-Dundee, ex-Goodman, and we're very pleased to have him. Engtushin Kishiksurin is my second Mongolian director. He's an exploration geologist. He's had a lot of experience in the Eurasian region, but importantly, he's been accredited with finding multi-million-ounce gold deposits in the region. We leverage Enki and his team to ensure that we have the equipment necessary in country to get our job done. John McVicker is our CFO. He was a partner at EY, came out of retirement to join our story, so we're happy to have him. And then the next 4 individuals is really where our lithium experience shines. Paul Fornazzari was the original chairman at Lithium Americas, now valued at just shy of $3 billion. He was instrumental in bringing in the strategic capital from Mitsubishi and Magna. He was also a director at Neo Lithium, which is pressing on to over $650 million in market cap today, but importantly was a key player in bringing in the CATL investment earlier this year. CATL, for those of you that may or may not know, is the world's largest battery manufacturing company. So quite the accolade to have under his belt. He's also a partner at Fasken, where he leads the global LATAM mining group. So having a gentleman of his caliber on our board, we're able to learn from his past experiences at Lithium Americas and Neo Lithium, but also help guide us as we get through the exploration phases of our projects here at Ion. Don Haynes is an exploration hydrogeologist. He is very much known as Mr. Lithium in the lithium spheres, having worked on very many lithium assets around the world. He currently designs and oversees the exploration programs of everything that we do on the ground. He's based in Toronto. He's worked with the OSC and the TSX to define the 43101 benchmark or benchline statements as to what can be a brine company and what can go public under brine. Dr. Hashbat Dashtatsaren is my scientist on the ground. He's a PhD lithium hydrogeologist, and he ensures Don's instructions from an exploration perspective are carried out in country. He also helps guide the team in country through the exploration programs as well. Dr. David Deeks, my most recent addition, was a senior vice president and chief technology officer at Lithium Americas, and prior to that was at Tesla, where he worked hand in hand with senior leadership to build Gigafactory 1 in Nevada. So I'm sure you can tell from the board that we've assembled here, quite a credible team to help truly understand the lithium possibilities in Mongolia.
So Tesla would be the natural buyer of your lithium in the future?
One would hope.
Okay.
So as I said, we started the company in 2017, very much, when lithium was not flavor of the month. I think the pandemic in our previous conversations has aided us tremendously, sort of catapult into this green revolution that we're seeing today. We now control over 110,000 hectares in the country of Mongolia. We're first movers in the brine space. We've already made an exploration on Babayul, and we will be commencing exploration on URGAKH, NARAN, and Babayul for the secondary programs in short order here. Lithium, I think, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but everybody should be quite aware that it is currently very desirable. It is very abundant, but quality does matter. And that's why we're here to try and determine the quality in Mongolia. We've had a fair bit of experience in country in Mongolia. We've done, over 12 years of experience in country. We have a strong exploration position given the oil and gas industry in Mongolia and the very similar equipment used for lithium brine mining. The advantage we have over our peers clearly is, we're located 24 kilometers from the world's largest consumer, that being China. The vast majority of the lithium today comes from LATAM or from Australia, with some unconventional resources coming online, such as Jadar in Serbia, the Rio Tinto investment, and then you have the clays and the brines in the US as well. Yeah, go ahead, Jochen.
Just one question, because I'm reading here Gobi Desert. Would there be an issue with water in that sense that you need it later on? Or how would it work to operate? Desert obviously is great when you want to evaporate, that's for sure, yeah? But how would it affect all the surrounding infrastructure and needs you have?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you look at what's happening in the Atacama, in Chile, in Argentina, and Bolivia. The vast majority of the operations there are evaporation operations, which means the Gobi Desert is ideal for that scenario. In terms of the environment and the infrastructure and the impact to that, it is quite minimal. We do work with the Environmental Services Group every quarter, so we do have to get sign-off from the Environmental Ministry to continue our work there. With advancements in direct lithium extraction technologies today, 90% of the water is pumped back into that water table, so that aquifer will be replenished. As a result of that, you're not truly having a massive environmental impact. So that's a great question. Thank you. And then last but not least, we are fully funded. So we're not looking for capital. We recently closed a bought deal from PI Financial and Stifel GMP that we'll talk about in just a few minutes here. But we are fully funded. So we have an aggressive growth strategy ahead of us. Mongolia is a nation that, some of us know, some of us don't. And Jochen and I always joke about how the Germans lovingly call it Mongolai. It is an untapped potential for lithium. We know there's hard rock there. We know there's brine because we've intersected them through our exploration program. As a board, we've had over 100 years of mining experience combined. A lot of their GDP in Mongolia is driven through mining, so the government is very friendly and allows us to operate there. And then our proximity to again, the largest markets in the world, that being China, make Mongolia a very friendly jurisdiction for us. Our first foray into Mongolia was in 2010 when my chairman, Matthew Wood, went into Mongolia looking for gold as a Rio Tinto gold scholar. Ended up being there during the last gold boom, went back to Australia, raised $20 million with no assets, came back to Mongolia, acquired a number of coal-bearing assets, de-risked them, built an early resource indication that was impossible for Banpu of Thailand to ignore. They then acquired Huna Coal for $500 million in cash 18 months from that IPO. So a big win for the country, a big win for the shareholders and the local stakeholders that Matt had involved at the time. And then 2016, we went back to Mongolia looking for gold, as that is Matt's remit. And we found that Centerra Gold was selling their Altan Saganovo project in Dorno province. We acquired that using a streaming agreement from Triple Flag Mining Finance, who's led by Sean Usmar, the ex-CFO of Barrick Gold, but also overseen by the Elliott Group, so Paul Singer out of New York. Took it public in May of 2018, the only gold mining IPO on the main board of the TSX. Tough resource market, crypto and cannabis were all the craze. Fast forward 22 months on, first gold pour using 100% Mongolian staff. June 2020, in the depth of the global pandemic, commercial production declared with 60,000 ounces with cash costs sub $750, again with 100% Mongolian staff. So with Ion Energy, what we're planning on doing is very much mirroring what we did with Hunu. Acquire as many lithium-bearing licenses as possible, de-risk them through a fully funded exploration program, build an early resource indication, and ultimately bring in a strategic or a JV partner to come in to look at the production phase of the project.
So you don't want to go by yourself into production. You would leave that to somebody who has done it like before, right?
Indeed, we're seeing more and more that the strategics are going into the supply chain at all levels, including the auto manufacturers, with Tesla now looking at nickel mines around the world. The likes of Ganfeng investing in lithium brines in Mali, Rio Tinto now reigniting Jadar in Serbia for $2.4 billion of capex. So these strategics are coming in, and they are looking to get involved in the supply chain. It's our goal to have them come in eventually as either a toehold partner to give them a board seat and leverage their abilities, but ultimately it would be a strategic that would take this to production when the timing is right. So Baba Ayol is our flagship license. That's the license we went public on back in August of last year. It's 81,000 hectares. It's in Sukhothai province. It's 24 kilometers from the Chinese border. Images on the right there, the green dots are sort of where you're seeing battery manufacturing capacity grow. China currently has 75% of the world's battery gigafactories, significant market share over anybody else anywhere else in the world. Tesla is now putting in place 5 more gigafactories, and you may or may not have watched the news recently, but Model Ys that were made in China were very recently delivered to Norway as early as this week, and we are looking at August 30th. So a lot of potential there as far as our proximity to that market. The early results of our asset show us about an average grade of 426 ppm, a maximum grade of 811 ppm. As I started off this conversation, I said, lithium is abundant, but chemistry is extremely important. Thankfully for us, potassium, magnesium, sodium, calcium, and boron ratios are all pretty low on Baba Ayol, which make them commercially viable. For evaporation to work, 250 ppm works just fine. 426 average grade, exciting enough for us to have conducted our first exploration program. We started exploration shortly after going public. We did a CSAMT program. We did a microseismic program to identify where we would put down the RC rig. The country then went into its first lockdown in November of last year. We used that time to better understand our assets and the results, but also develop an exploration program and look at expanding the company, which we'll talk about in just a second.
Yeah, and I think you just recently finished your 21 core holes with over 823 meters, right? But you have not released yet any samples.
That's correct. And the reason that there are no samples being released, when you look at RC drilling on a brine body or an aquifer body, your intention there is truly to identify the lithographic structure of the brines beneath surface. Now, you may strike one brine that flows at 1 liter per second with 800 ppm lithium, and then beneath that you might strike a second aquifer that has perhaps 20 liters per second in terms of flow rates, but only 20 ppm in lithium. Now these two are going to get mixed up as you start to pump up those brine samples to surface, and as a result you have a contaminated result. What we're doing is we proved out that the brines in fact do exist. We've seen that through the high salt content in what was pulled up, as well as some evaporation that we saw near surface when the brines were being pumped up. And now the next stage of the program is really to get a better sense of those aquifers. So hit them using hydrogeological drilling, where you have PVC pipes that go down to those aquifer bodies, allowing you to pull up that brine sample uncontaminated before you can provide results to market. We will provide results on the hard rock around there, the core samples that we obtained, but the brine samples, we're going to wait for a more comprehensive hydrogeological drilling program before we release those to market. So in the coming days, you can expect some news from the company. So I'd urge you to go into our website or visit your local news source and obtain our new exploration program that will contain and entail all of these items that I've spoken of today. So as far as the drilling, Jochen, you hit you talked about it. You said we pulled that up. We've submitted a lot of it to SGS. We'll analyze the hard rock primarily. The brine will be analyzed when we're doing hydrogeological sampling, so it's not contaminated, as I discussed. Some of the images from site there, so the Diamond RC rig drilling. We did not use reverse circulation, so we did not pump down water, but we pulled up the brine samples just using a pump, as well as collecting the core samples. If you look at the right here, right about where the pump is, you can see some salsification. So there's some salt sediment being created on the surface purely because of the heat. Now that tells you that this is very high mineral content rich water, or brine, as we know. And now we're extremely excited as a company to say we have in fact hit brine. And now the real work begins. How do we define an early resource indication? How do we get a sense of the chemistry? How do we get a sense of the purity? The hiatus that I spoke of earlier, as far as October, November, they went into the lockdown and they opened up in May. We didn't sit on our hands. We went out and we acquired a new license earlier this year. In February, we announced during the lockdown that we acquired the URGAKH NARAN license. It's 29,000 hectares in Dorn-Govi province, or South Govi province. One of the important aspects about this asset is the One Belt, One Road initiative that the Chinese are building all the way to St. Petersburg in Russia. Runs about 30 kilometers east of our project. So obviously the infrastructure that is being built will allow this asset or assets in the vicinity to ship product, either to the European market, if that would be the ultimate goal, considering what's happening in Norway with Northvolt. There's a lot of demand there, and getting to St. Petersburg is close enough. But then the alternative is, you can go down to China, where they're consuming the vast majority of the lithium in the world today. So as mentioned earlier, we will be putting out a press release in short order. If it's not out at the time of this thing airing, you can visit that to look at our exploration program that entails the maiden exploration drilling program at URGAKH NARAN that is about to take place in country. So that's the exploration program there. We're going to show you a bit more detail on the press release, so I'd urge you to take a look at that. Mongolia, again, low cost of operating environment. We're in an infrastructure-rich region, given Dorn-Govi is very close to the One Belt, One Road initiative. But more importantly, one of the largest wind farms in Asia is being built in Sukhothai province. We're only 30 kilometers from the border crossing, and there is a good enough power and road infrastructure in place for this to go to production using the necessary energy. So China continues to be a growing force in the EV market. The rest of the world truly is catching up. We know that for a fact. But our proximity to the Chinese market, given China currently imports the vast majority of their lithium from LATAM and Australia, makes the Asian market ideal for a company of our nature. I think one thing that's important to note is, the world is moving towards what's called a continental supply chain. So with Europe and you're seeing Jadar in Serbia come online. In the US, Thacker Pass and some clays are coming online. So unconventional resources are coming online. In Asia today, there are no lithium manufacturers of significant quality or quantity. And so Ion Energy looks to truly disrupt that trend of Asia importing the vast majority of their lithium when it is available on their doorstep.
I mean, the only thing you have to prove is the size of your project is large enough to really satisfy the big boys. Because if you view it under ESG, big picture, I would say it couldn't be better, right? Because as you said, 30 kilometers to the Chinese border, 75% of the battery makers are there. So what a win-win situation.
It's an absolute win. And I think, with this sheer scale that we have today, so with 110,000 hectares under our control, and our Bavayul asset being 81,000 hectares where we control the entire basin, that's a big indicator of something that can be of interest to the big boys and the strategics. And I say that because if you look at Latin America, you might find a basin that's about 100,000 hectares, but it's being shared by Albemarle, by SQM, by a number of junior miners. And what ends up happening is whoever has the most capital will reach that aquifer before you do. In our case, we control the entire aquifer, so we're not at risk of a major coming in and setting up shop beside us and ultimately taking the brine from under our feet. So quite the advantage that we have there. As a company, Jochen, we trade in Frankfurt under 5YB, and I apologize that this is not on this slide, but we're also on the QB under Ion GF and on the venture as ticker Ion. We're a very tightly held company with 25% of the company being held by management and insiders. We're fully escrowed. We continue to buy on market as management and as insiders. We're one of the biggest supporters of our stock. Our IPO price was 30 cents a share. We did a warrant at 40 cents a share. Those are somewhat in the money. And so we're seeing them organically convert. Earlier this year in April, we closed a bought deal for $5.75 million led by PI Financial and Stifel GMP. We did that deal at 50 cents with a 70-cent warrant. We're now trading at about 43, 42 cents a share, so a tiny bit lower than that. But Black-Scholes around the warrant will price them at around 8 cents. They are not really trading, and the market's purely waiting for news flow. Given we're out of August now, we're heading into September. Everybody's heading back to work. You will see a fair bit of news flow from us as a company. Our market cap relative to our peers, we are quite low in terms of valuation, only about 24 million Canadian. Our lowest instrument, as I mentioned, was 30 cents at our IPO price. Of the investor base that we have, as I said, management insiders own a fair chunk. Mongolian investors own a significant amount as well. We will be looking to do a Mongolian stock exchange listing later in this year, all things being equal. Family offices own about 7% of the company, based in Zurich and London, England. Delbrook Capital was our lead order on our recently announced bought deal. They put about $1.5 million in. Spartan Funds in Toronto, Alpha North, that's Steve Palmer in Toronto, and Maxit Capital, each of which hold just over 3% of the company as well.
So that looks like that easily 40-45% are in safe hands, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Perhaps
that's important that you are not taken over too cheap.
No, and that's why I continually say that we would like to have a strategic come in when we have some additional resource updates to announce. So as we start to do a bit more work this year, the intention would be for the company to engage with strategics in a more direct manner and have them come in for 10% of the company, perhaps offer them a board seat and a ROFR on acquiring and bringing these assets to production. So we don't need the capital. As I mentioned, we closed 5.75. So we have just over 5 million in the bank today. That funds our exploration programs on both our assets. It leaves us enough of a balance to look at acquiring additional assets. But as we start to check off our milestones and our catalysts, we have about $11.5 million in warrants that will start to convert as well. So we are very well capitalized. We have no requirement for capital at this time. And we expect the cash in hand to last us at least until the end of next year, if not more than that. So we've had an aggressive growth trajectory since having found the company in 2017. But what can you expect from us as we continue to grow? On the back of the bought deal, we're going to start to do some additional exploration on Babayul. We will do our maiden exploration on URGAKH NARAN. We'll start to release advanced results from both assets later on in this quarter. And in the fourth quarter of this year, we would hope that we can have sufficient results to bring in the institution. So we currently have paid research as a junior miner. It's imperative that we get our name out there, but we did a bought deal with PI Financial and Stifel GMP so that they can initiate coverage once we have the relevant results from exploration. We're also working with Cormark Securities to have them initiate coverage once we have specific results as well. So our up to Q4 of this year, I think you can see that we're going to spend a fair bit of time on exploration, but also on advancing our story through the institutional and strategic arms as well. From a comparison on a peer basis, the paid coverage puts us at about 88 cents a share, between 88 and 91 cents a share if you compare us to our peers. Relative to the land package that we hold, the grade that we have, we are truly at the tail end of that comp table. So a lot of upside there for those of you that are keen to acquire on market. From a summary perspective, it's imperative to reiterate, we are fully funded. We're not looking to raise capital. We have a very strong balance sheet and a very strong cap table. We're strategically located, given our proximity to the largest markets in the world. We've had over 100 years as a team in mining and mining operations. Lithium is climbing at rates unlike we've ever seen in the past. If you look at the price in December, it was 4,000 per LCE ton. About a month ago, it was 16,000 per LCE ton. So that's about a 400% increase in lithium prices, and we know demand is not going anywhere. Mongolia is a country we've operated in for a number of years, and we know that we can keep our margins quite low using 100% Mongolian staff because the skill set does indeed exist in country. And short of that, we believe we're well positioned to provide shareholder value. So that's our story again, Jochen. And,
super.
I'll stop there for questions, I guess.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that looks again like a compelling investment story. I was already able to follow with Step Gold, which was a great success then finally. And I have definitely one question, because 823 meters in 21 holes, that sounds like a little bit on the lower end. We are normally used to 5,000, 10,000 meters, whatever, 50,000 meters really. Yeah. But I think it's maybe the nature of, let's say, the lithium business, that you're not going like 1,000 meter deep, of course, right?
That's precisely right. And I think the geology of the region that we're operating in is a bit different. So you might find aquifers in Argentina that are about 400 meters below surface. So that's where they start. You have to go down 400 meters before you hit the aquifer. In our case, the aquifers are anything between 15 and 35 meters below surface. So once you've crossed 15 to 35 meters, that's where your aquifer is. As a result, you're not doing a lot of drilling, but we've proven now that those aquifers exist here. We know they're open at depth. We have to determine how deep they go, and ultimately start to pull up the brine samples for additional testing. So that's another advantage that we have, is our aquifers are not deep. They're not 600-700 meters below surface, making them extremely expensive to get to, and then ultimately pump up or use the pressure of the earth to bring it up to surface. So on the back of that, the numbers are low in terms of total drilling, but the exciting bit is we have in fact found brine. And we're very keen to start testing and assaying in a more controlled hydrogeological manner, and then ultimately start to put those results out to market, so we all have a sense of just how juicy this thing is.
Fantastic. So then the next question would be like, what costs a meter of drilling, or how do you measure that, so that we get an idea with your $5 million, what can you achieve?
Significantly cheaper than you would have in anywhere else in the world. For us, we're drilling anywhere between, depending on the ore body above surface, anything between 30 and 70 meters, $30 and $70 a meter.
Wow.
So it's quite cheap.
So that means with your 5 million, you can drill really a lot.
We can drill a lot, and we're now deploying our truck-mounted auger. So that's a company-owned asset that we acquired in 2019. It's capable of drilling down to 15 meters. It is quite cheap to operate, and that's where we'll be pulling up a lot of our brine samples in the upcoming exploration program.
Super, fantastic. So I would say we stop it here. That's fantastic. I think that was a great insight into your terrific company. And it looks to me a little bit like, not yet discovered a jewel in the lithium business, because your market cap is so low. But it's fantastic for our viewers, because then they have the chance to buy cheap, even cheaper than in the private placement. So that's not a bad idea, of course. Super. Sure. Yeah, so that means within the next weeks, we will see a lot of news flow then.
You'll start to see news in the next week, and then thereafter every 3 to 5 weeks. So hopefully everybody has sort of got their first holiday in since the start of the pandemic, given we're mostly vaccinated, and now let's get back to work.
Super. Fantastic. Ali, thank you very much for this presentation. And I have a very good feeling that we talk in approximately 4 to 6 weeks again, because when you really start now to bring out that stuff, we have to discuss.
Of course we do. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Ali. All the best. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ali Haji, the CEO of ION Energy. And you heard it. This is a lithium jewel operating in Mongolia, only approximately 24 to 30 kilometers away from the Chinese border, where 75% of all the gigafactories, battery manufacturers of the world are there. And those are the naturally, supply takers, which ION has to offer, meaning really good lithium to make batteries out of that. Of course, the company is still at an early stage, but I have a very good feeling with the drill program they just did. And when we get the first results here, and it looks like that they are quite good, and moving really forward for a very good finance with $5 million in the bank, I would suggest you really have a very close look onto this company, and maybe get some shares. I will do that for sure. So thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.